He had everything: a high-flying career, a prestigious name, and a stunning new wife on his arm. At the biggest gala of the year, Stephen Rowe was the king of his world, ready to show everyone what he had. But his night of triumph turns to ash when the ex-wife he abandoned walks in. She's not the broken woman he remembers. She's flanked by a billionaire, and a team of private security is clearing her path. This isn't just an awkward encounter, it's an execution. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The grand staircase of the Art Institute of Chicago was a river of tuxedos and silk, the muted roar of polite society echoing off the marble. A string quartet, perched on the landing, soared away at a Vivaldi piece, their music a thin, elegant veneer over the raw commerce of networking happening below. Stephen Rowe stood at the epicenter of it all, one hand holding a flute of champagne, the other resting possessively on the small of his new wife's back. He was, in a word, proud. Stephen, at 44, was a senior vice president at LaSalle Capital Partners. He was a man who had meticulously curated his life, and Isabel, his wife of 11 months, was his finest acquisition. She was 26, with hair the color of dark honey, and a laugh that made men twice her age feel interesting. Tonight, she was poured into a liquid gold dress that seemed to shimmer with its own light source. He watched Daniel Meeks, a managing director from a rival firm, watch her. The envy in Meeks's eyes was as clear and satisfying as the champagne. "Stephen, darling, Daniel was just telling me about his new boat," Isabel said, her voice a perfect blend of breathless interest and practiced charm. "Is that so, Dan? We're still deciding between the Hamptons or Telluride for the ski house," Stephen replied, a casual, devastating volley. He felt Isabel squeeze his hand. She knew the game. She loved the game. This was his world. This was the reward. This was why he'd done it. A phantom memory, unwelcome and sour, pricked at his consciousness. A different woman, different hair, a different life. Anna, his ex-wife. He pictured her as he last saw her, standing in the sterile hallway of their finalized divorce hearing. Her drab gray suit, the sensible, he'd always called them frumpy, shoes, the look of quiet, academic disappointment in her eyes. Dr. Anna Hayes. Even her name felt heavy and beige. She was a theoretical physicist, or something equally abstract and, in his world, useless. She'd spent their 15-year marriage buried in data, muttering about quantum encryption and data integrity at dinner parties, killing the mood. He'd told his friends and himself that he had outgrown her, that he needed a partner who could keep up. The truth, the one that slithered in his gut late at night, was that he'd left her for Isabel, who had been his assistant. The betrayal had been swift, brutal, and from his perspective, necessary. He'd traded up. He'd traded the comfortable, worn-in sedan for a brand-new sports car. Tonight, at the Founders Gala, he was parading his new trophy, and the world was applauding his choice. "Stephen, good to see you," a voice boomed. It was Senator Paulson, a man whose favor Stephen had been courting for months. "Senator, a pleasure. You know my wife, Isabel." "How could I forget?" the senator beamed, kissing Isabel's hand. "You, young lady, are a work of art. Stephen, you're a lucky, lucky man." "I know it, sir," Stephen said, his chest swelling. This was it. The absolute pinnacle. He was insulated by wealth, status, and beauty. Nothing could touch him. He was raising his glass to toast the senator when the mood in the grand hall shifted. It wasn't a loud noise. It was the opposite. It was a sudden, focused hushing. The conversational roar dipped, heads near the entrance turning in unison. "What's going on?" Isabel whispered, rising on her toes to see over the crowd. Stephen frowned, annoyed by the interruption. Probably some politician making a late dramatic entrance. Then he saw them. They weren't the museum's polite, maroon-blazered security. These were men in dark, impeccably tailored suits, moving with a silent, fluid purpose. They wore earpieces. They were not asking people to move. They were creating a path, their presence a solid, unyielding wall. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, a bubble of silence and space forming around the people they escorted. "My God," someone near him breathed. "Is that—" The security detail stepped aside, and two figures emerged into the center of the cleared space, a man and a woman. The man was Nikolai Volkov. Stephen's stomach went cold. Volkov wasn't gala-rich, he was nation-state rich, a recluse, a phantom who moved markets with a single, rumored decision in tech, logistics, and private energy. He had never, ever been seen at a Chicago social event. But it wasn't Volkov that made Stephen's champagne flute tilt, a drop of cold liquid splashing onto his hand. It was the woman on his arm. She was tall, her hair a sleek, dark curtain pulled back into a severe, elegant knot. She was wearing a custom-made gown of deep, emerald green satin that left her shoulders bare. Her only jewelry was a set of diamond earrings that seemed to drink the light. She turned her head, scanning the room with a look of calm, almost bored assessment. Her eyes, the same eyes he'd last seen filmed with tears in a courthouse hallway, were now clear, sharp, and devastatingly neutral. It was Anna. The string quartet faltered, one of the violins scratching a sour note into the sudden vacuum. Stephen's breath hitched. It was as if a switch had been thrown, plunging his vibrant Technicolor world into a cold, flat gray. This was not Anna. The Anna he remembered, the Anna he had constructed in his memory to justify his betrayal, was a creature of beige cardigans and untidy buns. She was a woman who smelled of old books and microwaved coffee. She was the anchor he'd cut loose to sail faster. This woman was an icebreaker. "Stephen? Stephen, who is that?" Isabel whispered, her grip on his arm no longer affectionate but sharp, her nails digging into his bicep. He couldn't answer. He was watching Anna. She moved with a liquid poise he had never seen, her posture perfect. She wasn't clinging to Volkov's arm. She was walking with him, a partner, not an accessory. Volkov himself, a man rumored to be utterly ruthless, was leaning in, listening to something she was saying, his expression one of genuine, rapt attention. A security man, built like a refrigerator, stepped slightly forward as a local photographer, emboldened by the sheer spectacle, tried to raise his camera. The guard didn't touch him. He just looked at him. The photographer lowered his camera, his face pale. The bubble moved forward. The gala's host, the museum director, practically sprinted toward them, his face a mask of flustered awe. "Mr. Volkov, Dr. Hayes, we are so honored. We had no idea." Anna smiled, a small, polite movement of her lips. "Mr. Davies, thank you for the invitation. The new wing is exquisite." Her voice. It was the same voice, but the tone was different. Lower, smoother, devoid of the faint, anxious energy he'd always associated with her. Dr. Hayes. The name echoed in his head. Dr. Hayes. He had always called her Anna. When he was diminishing her work, he'd called her Professor. But Dr. Hayes, it sounded like a weapon. "Stephen," Isabel said again, her voice tight. "That woman, is that Is that her? It's Anna, he managed to say, his voice sounding distant. Isabel's head snapped back to the scene. She was doing the math. The mousy, frumpy ex-wife he'd described, the woman Isabel had pitied and secretly despised as the before to her after, was standing 20 feet away, looking like a queen, on the arm of a man who could buy and sell this entire room, including Stephen. The power imbalance in the room, which Stephen had been dominating just moments before, didn't just shift, it shattered. It was a hostile takeover. But how? Isabel stammered. She looks incredible. That dress, those diamonds. That's what you see, Stephen wanted to scream. He wasn't seeing the dress or the diamonds. He was seeing the power. He was seeing the way Daniel Meeks and Senator Paulson were now craning their necks, their expressions nakedly hungry, desperate for an introduction. His contacts, his marks. Stephen tried to regain control. He was Stephen Rowe. He belonged here. He attempted a small, familiar wave, a look at that, my ex gesture. Anna and Volkov were walking past their position. Anna's eyes swept the crowd, and for a fraction of a second, they met Stephen's. There was no hatred, no lingering pain, no "you ruined my life" fire. There was nothing. Just recognition. A brief, polite, and utterly devastatingly neutral nod. The kind you would give a doorman you saw every day. She didn't just not care. She had, he realized, with a jolt of pure, cold panic, forgotten to care. Then she was past him. The entire gravitational center of the gala, the whispers, the stares, the ambition, followed in her wake, leaving Stephen and Isabel in a cold, irrelevant eddy. Well, Isabel said, her voice brittle. She dropped her hand from his arm and took a step away, as if to recalibrate. You certainly undersold her. She's cleaned up, Stephen said, hating how weak he sounded. She didn't clean up, Stephen, Isabel shot back, her pretty face hardening. She's radiant, and you said she was nothing. The crack had appeared, the perfect golden facade of their life. The one he had built on the wreckage of his first marriage was starting to splinter. He had sold Isabel a story, that he was the powerful man who had rescued her from an admin desk and saved himself from a boring wife. The story was a lie, and the truth, in emerald green satin, had just walked past them, flanked by men who could kill with their bare hands. The party was supposed to be his. Now it was awake. Stephen stood frozen, his champagne long gone warm. The string quartet had resumed playing, but the music felt frantic, a desperate attempt to stitch the night's elegant fabric back together. It was failing. He couldn't stop staring. Anna and Volkov hadn't vanished into a private room. They were doing something far more public and far more damaging. They were mingling. Or rather, Volkov stood with a regal stillness, and people, the real people, the billionaires, the policymakers, the old money matriarchs, were forming a neat, reverent queue to be presented to him, and by extension, to Anna. Stephen watched, his stomach churning with a toxic cocktail of jealousy and disbelief. He saw Daniel Meeks, the man whose envy he had savored, practically bow to Anna. He saw Senator Paulson, his senator, laugh at something she said, his eyes alight with a respect Stephen had never, ever received. I need another drink, Isabel said, her voice flat. She didn't wait for him. She walked away, her golden dress no longer looking radiant, but suddenly garish, a cheap imitation. He was alone. For the first time in years, at a party, Stephen Rowe was utterly, completely alone. His mind, a loyally aggressive thing, scrambled for a narrative, a box to put this in. She's his mistress, he whispered to himself. A plaything. Volkov is known for it. He'll get tired of her. This is a fluke. But his gut knew better. He watched Nikolai Volkov. The man wasn't displaying her. He was consulting her. Before shaking her hand, his eyes would flick to Anna. When the museum director spoke, Volkov let Anna answer. It wasn't deference exactly. It was partnership. A memory, sharp and acidic, flooded his senses. A Saturday afternoon, 3 years ago. He was on the patio, on a call, closing a deal. Anna had come out, her hands smudged with whiteboard marker, her eyes electric with discovery. Stephen, I think I solved the stable distribution problem, she'd said, holding up a sheaf of papers covered in equations. Anna, for God's sake, I'm on a call, he'd snapped, covering the receiver. Can't you see I'm working? Real work? The kind that pays for all this? He gestured impatiently at their house, their life. He remembered the light in her eyes dying. It hadn't just dimmed, it had been extinguished. She had looked at her papers, then at him. Right, she'd whispered. Real work. Sorry. She had crumpled the top paper in her fist and walked back inside. He'd felt a twinge of, not guilt, but annoyance. Annoyance that she had dared to equate her expensive hobby, her academic scribbles, with the savage, high-stakes ballet of his financial world. Now, watching her command the attention of a man who could buy LaSalle Capital with his pocket change, Stephen felt a different sensation. It was a cold, creeping dread, the sickening realization that the winning lottery ticket he'd been holding had been mistaken for trash, crumpled, and thrown away. He had to fix this. He had to re-establish the hierarchy. He drained his glass, set it on a passing tray, and began to move. He would go over, be magnanimous. He would be the bigger man, the benevolent ex-husband, pleased at her good fortune. He would show everyone that he was the one who had let her go. He navigated the crowd, but as he approached the circle of power, one of Volkov's security men, the one who had stared down the photographer, turned. He didn't step in Stephen's way. He simply existed. His presence was a period, a full stop. Stephen slowed, his bravado failing. He was close enough to hear them now. Which is why Dr. Hayes's platform is so revolutionary, Volkov was saying, his Russian accent a low rumble. It doesn't just protect data, it makes data theft irrelevant, obsolete. Senator Paulson looked at Anna. Doctor, is that true? Your work? It's ready for market? Anna smiled. We're past the theoretical stage, Senator. The beta is already implemented across Mr. Volkov's entire global logistics network. As of last month, his system is, quite literally, unhackable. The senator's jaw went slack. Stephen felt his own mouth go dry. The expensive hobby, the scribbles. He had been married to a woman who had solved the single biggest problem in modern technology, and he had been bored by it. He had been so obsessed with his own reflection in the eyes of lesser men that he had failed to see the Titan standing right next to him. Isabel returned, a fresh glass in her hand. Her eyes were red. Don't, she said, seeing the look on his face as he prepared to walk toward Anna. Don't what? I'm just going to say hello to my ex-wife. No, you're not, Isabel said, her voice low and vicious. You're going to go over there and try to claim her, like you own her, like her success is somehow related to you. I know you, Stephen. I've watched you do it at every party for 2 years. He recoiled. Isabel, it's disgusting, she whispered, her lip trembling. All this time, you made me feel like I was the upgrade, but we were the sideshow, you and me. She was the main event, And you were the idiot who left." Isabel turned and walked, not toward the bar, but toward the exit, leaving him standing alone, the truth of her words ringing in his ears, louder and more terrible than the applause that was suddenly breaking out as the museum director formally welcomed his new, most important patrons. He found her an hour later. The initial crush of people around Anna and Volkov had subsided. Volkov had been pulled into a private room with the museum's board, and Anna had for a moment been left to wander. She was standing in the Impressionist wing, alone, looking up at a Monet. The vibrant, chaotic strokes of paint seemed to hold her in a trance. The security detail was present, but discreet, hovering at the arched doorways of the gallery, giving her space. This was his chance, his last chance. Stephen felt his heart hammering, a desperate primal need to reset the narrative. He had to prove, to her and to himself, that he still mattered. He walked toward her, his footsteps echoing on the polished oak. "All those years," he said, his voice trying for light and reminiscent. "You never once wanted to come to this gala. You said it was frivolous." Anna didn't turn. For a long moment, she continued to study the painting. Finally, she sighed, a small, tired breath, and looked at him. Her eyes were clear. The neutrality was gone, replaced by something he found he liked even less: clinical observation. She was looking at him like a problem on a whiteboard. "It is frivolous, Stephen," she said, "but it's a necessary frivolity. Some people need to see the why before they can understand the what. This," she gestured to the gala, "is the why. So that's what this is, a show. You, Volkov, that ridiculous security." "They're not ridiculous. They're necessary," Anna said simply. "When your work is considered a strategic asset by 3 different governments, necessary takes on a new meaning." The casual gravity of her statement landed like a punch. "Strategic asset?" "Stephen, what do you want?" she asked, finally turning to face him fully. The emerald dress was magnificent, but it was her posture that held him captive. The way she held her shoulders, the absence of the deferential slump he'd cultivated in her. He faltered. What did he want? He wanted her to be the old Anna. He wanted her to be impressed by him. "I'm surprised, that's all. This isn't you." "You're right," she said. "It's not. The woman you're remembering, she doesn't exist anymore. You made sure of that." There it was, the first crack in her composure, a hint of the steel beneath. "Me?" he scoffed, indignation rising. "Anna, I didn't do anything to you. Our marriage, it just ran its course. We wanted different things." "Did we?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Or did you want a mirror, and you got angry when you saw a person instead?" "I wanted a partner, not a roommate who was more interested in equations than her own husband." Anna actually laughed. It wasn't a happy sound, it was sharp and brittle. "More interested in equations. Stephen, those equations were my life, my work. And you didn't just ignore it. You actively despised it. You belittled it. You belittled me." A flash of memory, him, throwing a stack of her papers off the dining room table to make room for his banker buddies. "Clean up this homework, Anna. We have real guests." "I was supporting us," he hissed, his face hot. "You were," she conceded. "You paid the mortgage, and in exchange, I was expected to be small, to be your quiet, admiring background. The smart wife you could trot out when it suited you and put away when it didn't." He saw Isabel then, hovering at the gallery entrance, her arms wrapped around herself. She was watching them. "And look at you now," Stephen sneered, gesturing at her. "So what? You ran off and found a bigger wallet? Is that the answer? You left me for that? Anna's expression hardened into something he'd never seen before. It was contempt. I didn't run off, Stephen. I left. After you emptied our joint accounts to put a down payment on a condo for your assistant, I had nothing. I had my brain, and I had my work, which you'd been trying to get me to abandon for a decade. I took my research, she continued, her voice like a surgeon's scalpel, the work you called my expensive hobby, and I sent it to 6 firms. 3 of them were in defense. 3 were in tech. Nikolai Volkov was the only one who flew to Chicago, sat in my tiny rented apartment, and asked, Dr. Hayes, what do you need? She took a step closer. He could smell her perfume. It was expensive and complex, nothing like the simple floral scent she used to wear. He's not my catch, Stephen. He's not my husband. He's my partner. He runs the hardware. I run the software. My company, H Quantum, is the firm securing his entire $400 billion enterprise. He's not my ticket into this party. He's my employee. This gala, she looked around, is his bonus. Stephen's blood ran cold. My company. You started a company? The day our divorce was final, she said. You were so busy fighting me for the house I'm now told you're about to lose, that you didn't even read the supplemental filings. You let your lawyer trade away your claim on my intellectual property for an extra $10,000 in the settlement. Your man called it a pile of academic junk. It was, to date, the single stupidest trade of your career. She adjusted a cuff. And now, I have to go. The senator wants to discuss a federal contract. It was... She paused, searching for the word. It was a moment. Seeing you, Stephen. Isabel. She gave a small nod to Isabel, who was standing, ghost-white, in the doorway. Then, without a backward glance, Dr. Anna Hayes walked away, her security detail falling into formation around her, leaving Stephen alone in the gallery, the silent, mocking faces of the impressionists watching him disintegrate. The drive home to the sleek, minimalist condo on Lakeshore Drive was a tomb of silence. The click of the turn signal was an accusation. The hum of the Mercedes engine was a funeral dirge. Isabel sat pressed against the passenger door, as far from him as she could get. She hadn't spoken since they'd collected their coats and made the walk of shame, as Stephen's brain was now calling it, out of the gala. They'd left early. No one had noticed. No one cared. Stephen's hands were clamped to the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He was a man suffocating. The air in the car was thick with unsaid words, with the stench of his colossal, life-altering failure. He's my employee. The stupidest trade of your career. The words echoed relentlessly. He had built his entire identity on being the smartest man in the room, the shark, the closer. And his frumpy, boring wife had executed a leveraged buyout of his entire life, using his own arrogance as capital. They pulled into the garage. The silence stretched as the elevator ascended, the soft ding at their floor making him flinch. He fumbled with the key, his hand shaking. The door swung open to their home, the condo that had once felt like a symbol of his victory. All white marble, glass walls, and stark modern furniture now felt like a high-end prison cell. It was cold, impersonal. Isabel walked straight to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the dark, churning expanse of Lake Michigan. You knew, she said, her voice small. What? Stephen said, tossing his keys onto a glass table with a clatter. At the gala, when you went to talk to her, you already knew. You knew she was that. You knew, and you let me stand there looking like a fool. Isabel, I had no idea, he said, ripping at his bow tie. I was just as blindsided as you. No. She spun around, her face a mask of sudden, violent clarity. You were blindsided by the money, by Volkov. But you weren't blindsided by her. You knew she was smart. You knew what she was working on. You just buried it. I did not. It was theoretical nonsense. Was it? Isabel walked toward him, her golden dress now just a costume. Or were you just terrified? Terrified? Of Anna? He laughed, but the sound was hollow. Of her brain, Isabel said, her eyes drilling into his. You told me you left her because she was boring, because she couldn't keep up. But that's not it, is it? You left her because you couldn't keep up with her. You were afraid that one day she'd wake up and realize that you were the boring one, that you were the academic junk. His hand flashed out, grabbing her arm. You shut your mouth. Isabel didn't flinch. She just looked at his hand, then back at his face, her expression one of profound, bottomless pity. It was worse than her anger. That's all you have, isn't it? She whispered. When the bluster fails, when the money doesn't impress, you just grab, you bully. He let her go as if she'd burned him. I chose you, he said, his voice cracking. I gave up everything for you. No, you didn't, Isabel said, rubbing her arm. You didn't choose me. You chose an idea. You chose a 24-year-old assistant who was so dazzled by your title and your corner office that she would never, ever question you. You didn't want a wife, Stephen. You wanted an audience. And Anna stopped clapping. She was right. The truth of it was so pure, so sharp, it cut the legs out from under him. He sank onto one of his ludicrously expensive Italian sofas, his head in his hands. He'd married Isabel because she was simple, because her ambitions were his ambitions, money, status, and beauty. She was the perfect reflection. And tonight, Anna had shattered the mirror. What you did to her, Isabel continued, her voice trembling with a new, cold fury. It wasn't just leaving. It was theft. You didn't just take a new wife. You tried to take her past. You tried to rewrite history to make her small. You told me she was weak. You told me she was emotionally unstable. She was, he yelled, his last defense. She was a wreck when I left. Because you were cheating on her, Isabel screamed, the sound tearing through the pristine quiet of the condo. Because you were draining her bank account and lying to her face for a year. My God. I helped you. I helped you draft the letters to her. I helped you hide the assets. Oh God. The realization hit her. She wasn't just the after. She was the co-conspirator. The moral complexity of her own role in Anna's betrayal, a betrayal she had justified by buying into Stephen's narrative of the dour, difficult wife, came crashing down. I'm just as bad as you are, she whispered, backing away, a look of self-loathing on her face. I'm the trophy, that's all I am, the prize for being a bastard. Izzy, no, that's not. Don't call me that, she snapped. I need to go. I can't be in this room. She grabbed her purse from the counter. Where are you going? He demanded, standing up. It's 2 a.m. I'm going to a hotel, she said, her hand on the doorknob. And tomorrow, I'm going to my mother's. And then I'm going to find a lawyer. A very, very good one. Not one of yours. Isabel, don't be ridiculous, he said, trying to regain the old, confident tone. You're upset. We're both upset. We'll talk in the morning. She looked at him, her beautiful face now, just the face of a very young, very tired woman. What's there to talk about, Stephen? The whole thing? It's a lie. You're not the man you pretend to be, and I'm not the woman I want to be. Not with you. She opened the door. "You can't just leave," he shouted, a raw panic rising in his throat. "The house, your things. They're not my things, are they?" she said, pausing in the doorway. "They're your things. The things you bought with the money you made. The things you bought from the woman you left. I don't want any of them." The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the massive empty room. Stephen stood, utterly defeated, staring at the lake. The city lights, once a glittering testament to his success, now felt like a million mocking eyes, all watching him. He was, for the first time, a truly poor man. The silence of the condo in the following days was a physical weight. It pressed down on him, suffocating. There was no music, no Isabel, laughing at a text, no clink of wine glasses as they prepared for a night out. There was just the hum of the refrigerator and the whistle of the wind off the lake. Stephen didn't go to work. He called in sick, a first for him. He couldn't face them. He couldn't face Daniel Meeks. He couldn't face the whispers. The story was everywhere. It wasn't just a gala rumor. It was a financial headline. The ghost in the machine. H. Quantum's 10 billion valuation. Forbes. Volkov's secret weapon, Dr. Anna Hayes. Wall Street Journal. His phone buzzed relentlessly, not with calls from clients, but from his lawyers. Isabel had been serious. Her petition for divorce was filed. And it was brutal. She wasn't just asking for a settlement. She was citing fraudulent inducement and emotional distress. And she was offering her testimony about his financial dealings during his first divorce as leverage. He was trapped. On the third day, he forced himself to go to the office. The walk from the elevator to his corner suite was the longest of his life. He felt the stairs. He saw the way his assistant, a new one, a plain, efficient woman in her 50s, wouldn't quite meet his eye. "Mr. Rowe," she said, "Mr. Davies from the board is holding for you." Not LaSalle's board, the museum's board. He picked up the phone. "This is Stephen Rowe." "Stephen." "Robert Davies," the voice was clipped, all warmth from the gala gone. "I'm calling as a courtesy. We're concerned." "Concerned? About what?" "About your connection to Dr. Hayes. Or rather, your former connection. It's a bad look, Stephen." "A bad look? Robert, my personal life is my own. Not when it's this public," Davies snapped, "and not when it involves our new patron-in-chief. Dr. Hayes and Mr. Volkov have pledged a 9-figure donation. They are, as of this morning, the most significant donors in this museum's history. And the word is, the story of your separation is not a pleasant one." Stephen's blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the board feels your presence at future events would be complicated, distracting. Until this blows over, we think it's best you step back from your committee appointments." The phone clicked. He'd been excommunicated. He stared at the city skyline, the city he'd conquered. He had been so proud. So proud. He thought of his conversation with Anna in the gallery. "You're right. The woman you're remembering, she doesn't exist anymore. You made sure of that." He had. He had been the catalyst. His cruelty, his arrogance, his betrayal. They hadn't broken her. They had forged her. He had been the fire, and she had walked out of it, tempered like steel. He, on the other hand, had been burned to ash. His psychological conflict was a vortex. He hated her. He hated her for her success, for her poise, for her timing. He hated her for making him small. But beneath the rage, something deeper and more terrible was surfacing. Admiration. And beneath that, the deepest, darkest truth of all. He missed her. He didn't miss the trophy wife. He didn't miss the status. He missed Anna. He missed the real Anna, the brilliant, passionate, messy, cardigan-wearing woman. He missed their Sunday mornings with the paper. He missed arguing with her about politics. He missed the quiet, powerful hum of her brain working in the next room. He had been married to a star, and he'd complained that it wasn't a lamp, that he couldn't just switch it on and off. "Mr. Rowe," his assistant's voice over the intercom. Your lawyers are here. They said it's urgent. Regarding both your cases." He slumped in his chair. The glass walls of his office, his cage, reflected a man he didn't recognize. A man who had traded a universe for a handful of glitter and was now left with nothing but empty hands. The next 6 months were a systematic dismantling of a life. Stephen Rowe, the titan of LaSalle Capital, ceased to exist. First, the job. He wasn't fired, not officially. He was transitioned. His clients were quietly reassigned. His responsibilities were shifted. His senior vice president title remained, but the power was gone. He was a ghost in a $5,000 suit, haunting an office that was no longer his. The unspoken message was clear. His reputation, built on an image of savvy and ruthless control, was permanently compromised. The man who'd made the stupidest trade of his career in his own marriage could no longer be trusted with other people's fortunes. Second, the divorce. Isabel's lawyers were merciless. She didn't want his money, not really. She wanted out, and she wanted to punish him. She got the condo. She got the Mercedes. She got half of what remained of his liquid assets. He didn't fight. He had nothing left to fight with. The firm, eager to distance themselves from the PR nightmare, offered him a generous severance package to simply disappear. He moved into a small, rented apartment in Lincoln Park, the kind of place he would have sneered at a year ago. It was beige. It had a galley kitchen. He was, for the first time since his 20s, truly alone. The silence was no longer a weight. It was a mirror. With no parties to attend, no deals to close, no beautiful wife to manage, there was no one left to perform for. There was only Stephen. And he was forced to look. He saw the cowardice. He saw the insecurity that had masqueraded as ambition. He saw the profound, gaping void in himself that he had tried to fill with other people's envy. He finally understood what Isabel had meant. He'd left Anna not because he was strong, but because he was terrified. He was a bully who had punched up, missed, and broken his own hand. One rainy Tuesday, sorting through boxes, he found a picture. It was from early in their marriage, he and Anna hiking. They were muddy, grinning, arms slung around each other. She was wearing a ridiculous wool hat, her nose red from the cold. She looked, he realized, incandescently happy, and so did he. He sat on the floor, the photograph in his hand, and he wept. It wasn't a cry of self-pity. It was a cry of grief, a mourning for the man he could have been, for the life he could have had, if he hadn't been so poisoned by pride. He knew what he had to do. It wasn't about getting her back. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about correction, an acknowledgement. He called his last remaining lawyer, a man who wasn't part of the corporate machine. "I want to reopen the settlement with my first wife," Stephen said. The lawyer was baffled. "Stephen, that's closed. Done. Why would you—" "I want to void the intellectual property clause. I want to cede any and all past, present, and future claims I might have." "But you don't have any claims. You traded them away." "I know," Stephen said, looking at the picture, "but the trade itself, it was coercive. It was based on a lie. I want it on record. I want to sign a full binding renunciation." "That's insane, Stephen." It's a non-move. It means nothing. It means something to me, he said. 2 days later, a simple, one-page document was couriered to the headquarters of H Quantum in Palo Alto. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a legal document, relinquishing a claim he didn't have to a property he didn't understand. In a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the California hills, Dr. Anna Hayes was in the middle of a presentation. Her assistant entered and placed a single file in front of her. Anna paused. She read the document. Her face remained impassive. Nikolai Volkov, sitting at the end of the table, raised an eyebrow. "A problem, doctor?" Anna looked at the signature on the page. Stephen Rowe, a ghost from another life. She slid the paper back into the file. It was a meaningless gesture. Legally, he was giving her something she already owned, but it was also, she knew, the most honest thing he had ever done. It was an admission. It was, in his own broken way, an apology. She closed the file. "No, Nikolai," she said, turning back to the holographic display. "Not a problem. A loose end. It's tied." She took a breath, clicked to the next slide, and continued to change the world. 2 years passed. The city of Chicago moved on, as cities do. Stephen Rowe found work. Not at a bank. No one would have him. He found a job at a small, non-profit consultancy that helped community organizations manage their finances. The pay was a joke. The office was cramped. His suit was now a pair of Dockers and a worn Oxford shirt. He was quieter. He'd lost the brittle, arrogant energy. He listened more than he spoke. He took the L train to work. He read books. For the first time in his life, his identity was not tied to his title, his bank account, or the woman on his arm. It was just his. One evening, he was attending a community zoning meeting in a stuffy high school cafeteria. He was there to present a budget proposal for a new park. He saw her across the room, by the coffee urn. Isabel. She looked different. Her hair was its natural darker brown. She was wearing glasses and a simple, professional dress. She looked, he thought, less like a trophy and more like a person. Their eyes met. The jolt was electric, not of passion, but of recognition. Two survivors of the same shipwreck. He walked over. "Isabel." "Stephen." She didn't smile, but she didn't recoil. "You're looking well." "So are you," he said. What are you doing here?" "I'm a paralegal," she said, a small, proud lift to her chin. "For the Legal Aid Society. We're representing the Tenants Association." He nodded, impressed. "Good. That's really good, Isabel." It's a start," she said. An awkward silence fell between them. The ghosts of their shared past, the lies, the ambition, the gala, hung in the air. Stephen started, fumbling. I was sorry for all of it. For what I did. To you. To Anna. For the man I was." Isabel looked at him for a long time, studying his face. She saw the new lines. She saw the absence of the old smug smile. "I know, Stephen," she said finally. "Me too. I was just as complicit. I wanted the lie. I couldn't live with it." "Are you happy?" he asked. She sighed. "I'm working. I'm paying my own rent. It's real. I'll take real over happy right now." She offered a small, sad smile. "You?" "The same," he said. "It's just real." "Mr. Rowe?" a woman called from the front. "You're up." "That's me," he said. He nodded to Isabel. "Good seeing you, counselor." "You too, Stephen." He walked to the front of the cafeteria, picked up his notes, and began to speak about playground funding and bond issues. As he was leaving, he passed a newsstand. He stopped. On the cover of Wired magazine, She was staring back at him. Dr. Anna Hayes, the architect of the quantum future. She looked formidable, powerful, not a trace of the woman he'd married, not a trace of the woman he'd seen at the gala. This was someone new entirely. He stood there for a long time, the evening traffic rushing past him. He didn't feel jealousy. He didn't feel anger. He didn't even feel regret, not the sharp, acidic kind. He just felt a profound, aching sense of distance, a sense of a life that had run parallel to his and had then rightly veered off into the stratosphere. He bought the magazine. He tucked it under his arm, pulled up the collar of his simple coat, and walked home in the cold Chicago night. A man, finally, painfully, at peace with being small. 2,000 miles away, in a fortress of glass and silence, Dr. Anna Hayes ran the future. The H Quantum campus in Palo Alto was not an office. It was a 20-acre think tank, a place where the grass was kept green by recycled water and the buildings were designed to let the light in, but not the noise. Her personal office was a vast, minimalist space. One wall was a solid pane of smart glass overlooking a grove of redwood trees. The other walls were, quite literally, whiteboards, covered in the elegant, esoteric script of quantum equations. This was her armor. This was her kingdom. She was finishing a call with the Secretary of Defense. "No, Secretary," she was saying, her voice calm and absolute. "We will not be providing a backdoor to the algorithm. The entire point of H Quantum is that it is, by design, incorruptible. Not even by us, especially not by us. Yes, I understand the strategic imperative, but the greater imperative is trust. The moment we compromise, the platform is worthless. Thank you for your time." She ended the call, the silence of the room rushing back in. On her desk, a flawless slab of reclaimed walnut, sat 2 items. One was the new issue of Wired magazine, her own face staring from the cover, the words, "The Architect of the Quantum Future," emblazoned beneath. The other was a simple, framed document. It was the legal renunciation Stephen had signed 2 years ago. Her assistant, a ruthlessly efficient woman named Kira, had framed it. Anna had been unsure why she kept it. It was, as Stephen's own lawyer had called it, a non-move. She looked at the magazine, then at the document. The cover was the what. The document was the why. She had never, not once, set out for revenge. Revenge was a hot, messy, emotional impulse. Anna was a creature of logic. What she had sought was not revenge. It was justice. A rebalancing of an equation that had been violently skewed. The gala, 2.5 years ago, had not been a fluke. She and Nikolai had planned it. They had known Stephen and his new wife would be there. They had known the exact moment to arrive for maximum impact. It was not a social call. It was a strategic deployment. It was the public announcement of her company's emergence, aimed directly at the heart of the financial and political world she had once been excluded from. Her anger at Stephen had burned out long ago, leaving behind something colder and harder. Resolve. The affair with Isabel had been a common, banal betrayal. It hurt, yes, but it was a wound to the heart. The real wound, the one that had festered, was the wound to her mind. She remembered, with a clarity that still made her fingers clench, the day she had tried to explain her breakthrough to him. The stable distribution problem. He had been getting dressed for a benefit, knotting a silk tie. "That's great, honey," he'd said, his eyes on his own reflection. "Can you use that math to figure out why my golf handicap is so high?" He'd laughed. And then, as she stood there, holding the papers that would become the foundation of her empire, he had patted her on the head. literally. A condescending pat, as one would a clever dog that had learned a new, useless trick. Just make sure the caterer's bill is on my desk, okay, Professor? That was the moment he had ceased to be her husband. The rest was just paperwork. Nikolai Volkov, in contrast, had read her initial 80-page proposal, flown to her tiny apartment, sat on her second-hand sofa for 3 hours, and then, in his low, rumbling accent, had said 5 words that changed her life. I see it all, Doctor. He hadn't just seen the what, he saw the why. The inter-office chime buzzed. Kira? Dr. Volkov is here, ma'am. Send him in. Nikolai entered. He was the same as he'd been at the gala. Imposing, impeccably dressed, his presence sucking the casual energy from the room. He was her partner, her investor, and in many ways, her only true peer. Their relationship was one of deep, abiding, and utterly platonic respect. He looked at the magazine on her desk. A good cover, he noted. The lighting is dramatic. It's effective, Anna replied, closing the cover. I received word this morning, he said, moving to the window. LaSalle Capital has entered into a forced merger. Your ex-husband's old firm. Their risk models were antiquated. A small, satisfied pause. They were over-leveraged in sectors our technology has just rendered obsolete. Anna felt nothing. A distant echo of something. He hasn't worked there for 2 years, Nikolai. I know, he turned. His severance options will be worthless. He is, as you Americans say, tapped out. Completely. Does this please you? Anna considered the question. It confirms the data, she said. Arrogance is a poor hedge. And him? The man? Stephen is irrelevant, she said, echoing his own words from years prior. A footnote in my research. Nikolai studied her. I do not believe that, Anna. Not entirely. You keep his letter. You stare at that magazine. He is not a footnote. He is the, how do you say, the control group, the baseline against which you measure your new reality. He was right, of course. He was always right. Stephen wasn't the enemy. He was the variable that had proven her hypothesis. Kira, Anna said into the chime, you can hold my calls for the next hour. Actually, Doctor, Kira's voice came back, hesitant. There is one person. She's insistent. She says it's a personal matter, a timeline-sensitive one. Anna frowned. Who is it? A Ms. Isabel Rowe. Well, Kira corrected. She said her name is Isabel Brent now. Anna's blood, which had been flowing at a calm, steady rate, suddenly went cold. She could feel Nikolai's eyes on her. Isabel, the name was a shard of glass. In all her calculations, in all her strategic planning, Isabel had been a non-entity, a trophy, a symptom of Stephen's weakness. She wants what? Anna managed, her voice suddenly tight. She's not in California, she's in Chicago. She wants to know if you'll be in the city anytime soon. She said she needs to return something. Return something? Anna scoffed. A casserole dish. She was very clear, Doctor. She said, I have something that belongs to her, from her marriage, something Stephen never knew I had. She sounded, if I may, ma'am, desperate. Anna was silent. Her fortress of logic and glass and steel suddenly felt flimsy. Stephen was a clean break, a legal dissolution. But Isabel was the mess. The human, emotional, humiliating mess. The woman who had slept in her bed, with her husband, while Anna was in the next room, working. What do you want to do? Nikolai asked, his voice soft. Anna looked out at the redwood trees, ancient and unbothered. She had spent years making herself unbailable. She had built a life so secure, so high-level, that no one from her past could ever touch her. And now, The one person she had never, ever wanted to see again was knocking at the gate. "Kira," Anna said, her voice hard as diamond, "check the schedule. When am I next in Chicago?" "The Global Logistics Summit, Doctor, in 3 weeks. Book a hotel, a neutral suite, not my usual, and get a time from Ms. Brent. 1 hour. And Kira?" "Yes, Doctor. No one else on my team is to know about this. No one." "Understood." The line clicked off. Nikolai watched her. "You are going to see her." "I am," Anna said. "Why?" he asked. "She is less than a footnote. She is a mistake in the margin." Anna turned from the window, her eyes dark and unreadable. "Because, Nikolai, she was there. She saw the before. And I need to know what thing. A woman like that thinks she can possibly return to a woman like me." The story of Stephen, Anna, and Isabel isn't just about betrayal. It's about the difference between looking powerful and being powerful. It's a reminder that the people we throw away, the ones we underestimate, might just be the ones who own the future. What did you think of Stephen's downfall? Was his redemption at the end enough? Or did he deserve more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a story of just desserts, and be sure to subscribe for more emotional dramas just like this one. Thank you for watching.